You should have told me. Was I ever going to find out? Or were you planning to keep me in the dark forever?
Bright fluorescent lights reflected off the polished hospital floor as Rowan Kingsley stormed down the corridor of the maternity wing. Nurses and visitors glanced up in surprise at the tall, determined man cutting through the hall like a thunderbolt. Dressed in a tailored charcoal suit and an expression of barely contained rage, Rowan moved with purpose. His heart was pounding with fury and betrayal, each step fueled by the thought of what he was about to face. Moments ago, Rowan had received an unexpected phone call. The brief message on the other end had turned his world upside down. His ex-wife was in the hospital, giving birth. The news was like a match to dry kindling. How dare Zara not tell him? And whose children were they? Questions and accusations swirled in Rowan's mind, stoking his anger. He felt deceived and blindsided, convinced that this was the final proof of a betrayal that had shattered their marriage nearly a year ago. As he neared the room number he'd been given, Rowan clenched his fists, trying to steady himself. Anger was easier to feel than the ache underneath. He told himself he was here for answers, maybe even retribution. In his mind, he rehearsed the demands he would make. Why hadn't she told him she was pregnant? Who was the father of these children? And why on earth was he, Rowan, listed as the emergency contact, if indeed he was? Nothing made sense, except the bitter narrative he'd held onto since their divorce, that Zara had been unfaithful and these twins were the result of her disloyalty. Rowan reached a half-open door and saw the number matching what he scribbled on a piece of paper. His chest tightened. This was it. With a deep breath, he pushed the door the rest of the way open, bracing himself in righteous anger. "Zara," he began sharply, voice echoing off the sterile walls of the private hospital room. "If you're already hooked by Rowan and Zara's story, you're going to want to see where this goes. This tale of betrayal, secrets, and second chances is just getting started. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss what happens next. And drop a comment below. Do you think Rowan deserves answers, or should Zara have kept this secret forever? Now, back to the story." Inside, the scene that greeted him was not what he expected. Zara, his ex-wife, lay propped up in a hospital bed, looking exhausted and radiant all at once. Her rich brown skin glowed with a light sheen of sweat and emotion. Dark curls were pulled back from her face, and her eyes, those deep ebony eyes he remembered so well, were focused downward with a tenderness he hadn't seen in a long time. In her arms nestled a tiny bundle wrapped in a white hospital blanket. Beside her, in a clear bassinet, squirmed a second newborn, a matching white cap on its tiny head. Rowan's words died in his throat. He stopped dead in his tracks just a few steps into the room. All the fury that had been propelling him forward hit an invisible wall at the sight before him. Zara looked up at him, startled. In that moment, time seemed to slow. Rowan's icy blue eyes locked onto Zara's wide, surprised ones, then flicked down to the infants. One baby let out a soft whimper, and Zara instinctively rocked the bundle in her arms, murmuring gentle words of comfort. The other twin, sensing the disturbance, began to fuss as well, tiny fists waving in the air. Zara tore her gaze from Rowan to tend to the second newborn, scooping the baby up against her chest despite her obvious fatigue. It was a heart-melting sight, Zara cradling two newborns, one against each shoulder, humming faintly in a soothing rhythm. Rowan stood there, jaw slack, utterly disarmed. The anger on his face faltered, replaced by a mix of shock, confusion, and something else. It was impossible not to soften at the edges, seeing Zara like this. She had always been beautiful to him, but now there was a new depth too. That beauty, the gentle fierceness of a mother protecting her young. The scene pricked at emotions Rowan thought he'd buried. A pang of longing hit him unexpectedly, robbing him of speech. For a second, he simply stared, his heart constricting with a feeling he refused to name. Zara was the first to break the silence. "Rowan?" she asked, voice raspy and weak from exhaustion. Her eyes narrowed in confusion and wariness. She adjusted the babies in her arms protectively, as if shielding them from the sudden intruder. "What What are you doing here?" Hearing her voice, familiar yet distant, shook Rowan out of his trance. The reality of why he came here resurfaced like a thorn. His expression hardened again, though not as sharply as before. He cleared his throat. "Why do you think I'm here?" he replied, trying to inject steel into his tone. "I found out you were here, and I had to see for myself." His eyes flicked meaningfully to the babies, then back to her. "I think you know why." Zara's lips pressed into a firm line. She looked away, focusing on her newborns instead of the man at the door. Rowan noticed how she drew them closer. A protective maternal instinct radiated from her every movement. When she finally spoke, her voice was laced with fatigue and edged with bitterness. "If you came to yell at me or cause a scene, I have nothing to say to you. Please just go." Rowan stepped closer instead, letting the door swing shut behind him with a gentle click. He wasn't leaving, not yet. His gaze dropped to the infants cradled against Zara's hospital gown. They were so tiny, one nestled under her chin, the other against her shoulder, their little faces barely visible. A strange warmth spread through Rowan's chest as one baby gave a soft sigh in Zara's arms. He quickly steeled himself again. Don't get distracted. He was here for answers. The surge of tenderness he felt was unwelcome and inconvenient. "You should have told me," Rowan said, trying to keep his voice even. Despite his efforts, hurt mingled with the anger. "Was I ever going to find out? Or were you planning to keep me in the dark forever that you were having—" He stopped, unable to say the word twins out loud yet. It felt too surreal. Zara let out a tired scoff. "Told you?" She echoed softly, incredulously. Her eyes flashed with a pain that caught Rowan off guard. "You made it clear you wanted nothing to do with me, Rowan. You decided to believe I was someone I'm not. Why would I tell you anything after that?" Her words pierced him. For a moment, he had no rebuttal. Instead, a memory threatened to surface, of the night their marriage shattered in accusations and heartbreak. Rowan pushed it back down, not ready to revisit it. He focused on the present, on the crying questions that had haunted him since that fateful time. "So it's true then," he said lowly, trying to keep his composure. "You went and had children with someone else." The last words were practically a hiss, jealousy seeping through even though he despised that he still felt it. Zara's eyes widened, and for a heartbeat Rowan thought he saw moisture there, tears she was too proud to shed in front of him. She gently placed the babies back into the bassinet side by side, pausing to ensure each was bundled safely. Then, with trembling arms now free, she lifted her chin and looked at him squarely. "I did no such thing," she said, voice quiet but firm. "Believe what you want, Rowan, but I know the truth. These are my children, my babies, and they have nothing to do with you." That last sentence slapped Rowan harder than any physical blow. "They have nothing to do with you." He hadn't realized until that moment how deeply the thought of these children being someone else's had cut him. He had prepared for anger, for confrontation, but not for the sting of being told he had no part in this at all. His stomach lurched. He clenched his jaw, struggling to maintain the mask of aloofness. Rowan's silence hung heavily in the room. Only the soft snuffles of the newborns and the distant beeping of monitors filled the void. Zara sank back against her pillows, clearly spent from the effort of sitting up and talking. A curly strand of hair fell into her face, and she closed her eyes, breathing slowly as if to calm herself for the sake of the babies. He took another step closer. At the foot of her bed now, Rowan could see the twins more clearly in the bassinet. Two tiny faces, one slightly darker in complexion than the other, but both a beautiful blend of features. One baby yawned, a tiny fist escaping the blanket and stretching upward. Without thinking, Rowan reached down. His large hand hovered over the bassinet for a moment, uncertainty written across his usually confident features. He hesitated, then gently grasped the edge of the plastic crib instead of touching the child. He was afraid to touch, afraid that if he did, something in him might break. "They're beautiful," Rowan found himself murmuring. The words slipped out unguarded, surprising them both. He cleared his throat hastily and straightened, regaining a measure of composure. "I mean, I just want to know the truth, Zara. His voice was quieter now, the fight momentarily gone out of him as awe crept in. Why didn't you tell me? Whose children are these? Zara opened her eyes again. Those eyes, usually so expressive, now were wary and guarded. For a long moment, she just looked at Rowan. The tension in the air was thick, a chasm of hurt and unresolved feelings stretching between them. When she finally spoke, her tone was flat. You lost the right to know anything about me or my children the day you stopped trusting me. Rowan flinched. He had expected anger from her, even hatred. But this calm resignation, as if he were a stranger, somehow that was worse. He ran a hand through his ash-blonde hair, frustration mounting. Zara, please, I just need to hear you say it. Are they… He couldn't finish the question. Mine? The word lodged in his throat, too risky to voice. Hope and fear warred within him. Zara's gaze did not waver. I will not play into your accusations and paranoia again, she replied, each word measured. Believe whatever you want, Rowan. It's not like you believed me when it mattered. Rowan opened his mouth, then closed it. He felt suddenly off balance. This confrontation was not going at all as he had envisioned during his drive over. He expected screaming, denial, maybe even tears. But Zara was just tired and done. Her walls were up, and he realized with a sinking feeling that he was completely shut out of the most important moment of her life. It made his chest ache. His eyes drifted again to the babies. One twin, the one with a lighter complexion, wriggled and made a tiny squeak, almost like a kitten. The movement knocked the cap askew on the infant's head, revealing a few wisps of fine hair the color of corn silk. Rowan inhaled sharply. That shade was unmistakable, a pale gold, just like his own hair as a baby in photos his mother had shown him. A spark of possibility flared in Rowan's chest, so sudden it hurt. He looked more closely, the baby's little face scrunched up as if about to cry, eyes cracking open for a second. Were they blue? It was hard to tell. Newborn eye color was often murky, but he thought he saw a hint of blue, and the other twin, still sleeping peacefully, had a deeper brown tone to her tiny features, perhaps taking after Zara. Rowan's mind raced. Could it be? Could they really be his? The idea was at once thrilling and terrifying. If they were his children, that meant everything he'd believed since their separation was wrong. It meant he had abandoned Zara when she needed him most. It meant he had two babies, a family that he'd never even known about. But if they weren't his, then she truly had moved on and had a family with someone else, confirming his worst fears of her betrayal. He realized he was trembling. Rowan Kingsley, the confident billionaire who rarely showed hesitation in the boardroom or in life, was shaken to his core by two tiny infants and the woman he once called his wife. His throat felt dry as he forced the next words out. I want a paternity test. Zara's eyebrows shot up, disbelief and anger flaring in her expression. You have some nerve, she whispered, her voice trembling now not from weakness but emotion. After everything. You walk in here, see me with my babies, and your first thought is a paternity test. Her volume rose on the last two words, one of the babies stirring and starting to cry at the sudden noise. Zara immediately calmed herself, blinking back tears as she turned to soothe the crying newborn with a gentle touch. She shushed softly, leaning her face close to the wailing infant until the baby quieted at the familiar comfort of her mother's presence. Rowan stood silently, guilt pinching him as he realized he'd caused the baby to cry. When Zara looked back at him, a single tear had escaped down her cheek. Get out, Rowan, she said in a low, hard voice he had never heard from her before. It was devoid of warmth, devoid of the loving, kind woman he once knew. I just went through this. She nodded toward the babies, indicating the intense labor and delivery she had endured. Alone. I don't have the energy for your mistrust and accusations. Not now. Not after everything. Rowan remained rooted in place. A whirlwind of conflicting emotions churned inside him. Anger, hurt, guilt, and an ache of longing that grew stronger by the second. He glanced at the door, his pride urging him to leave as she asked. Yet his heart, tethered undeniably to Zara and those tiny babes, would not let him move. If the truth doesn't come out, the pain will. The thought thundered in his mind, an echo of advice he'd once heard. And he was so tired of pain. Rowan knew there was only one way forward. "I'm not leaving," he said quietly, resolve hardening in his voice. He lifted his chin, meeting Zara's gaze directly. "Not until I know the truth. One way or another." Zara's breath hitched, as if his words had surprised her, but she quickly masked it with a cold stare. For a long moment, neither spoke. The tension was broken only by the soft coos of the newborns between them. Finally, Rowan spoke again, gentler this time. I'll arrange for the test myself. You don't have to do anything." His eyes flickered to the babies. "Just a quick swab. If I'm wrong..." His voice caught. If he was wrong, if these children truly were not his, then he would walk away forever, as much as the thought hollowed him out. "If I'm wrong, I'll never bother you again. But if I'm right..." Zara closed her eyes, clearly fighting back another wave of emotion. A tear slipped from the corner of one eye, trailing down to her chin. When she opened them, the fight seemed to have drained out of her. "Do whatever you want, Rowan," she whispered, exhaustion in every syllable. "It wouldn't be the first time you let others decide what my truth is." Her words stung, but Rowan accepted them in silence. He carefully stepped around to the side of the bed, moving slowly as if approaching a wild, wounded animal. On the small table by her bed, a nurse had left cotton swabs and sample. Envelopes, likely standard for any number of newborn tests. Rowan's fingers shook slightly as he picked up 2 swabs. Zara watched in silence, her jaw tight. She neither helped nor hindered, as Rowan softly brushed one swab inside the cheek of the first sleeping infant, then the other swab on the second twin, who had fallen back asleep as well. The babies barely stirred at his careful touch. A pang went through Rowan at how soft their cheeks were, how incredibly tiny and fragile these new lives felt under his fingertips. When it was done, he sealed each swab in separate sterile envelopes provided. He then added his own cheek swab for good measure, sealing that too while Zara looked on, expression unreadable. The gravity of what he was doing weighed on him. In a low voice he promised, "The results will be ready by tomorrow. I'll let you rest until then." Rowan turned to leave, clutching the precious test samples in one hand. At the doorway, he paused and looked back. Zara was gazing down at her babies, tears silently slipping down her face as she gently stroked their tiny heads. Rowan's chest ached at the sight. There was so much he wanted to say, but nothing would come out. So he left quietly, pulling the door closed behind him. In the empty hallway, Rowan exhaled a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. His mind was racing with what tomorrow might bring. One thought rang crystal clear through the chaos of his heart. Money can buy comfort, but it can't buy character, loyalty, or family. He had learned that the hard way. And now, standing alone in a stark hospital corridor, Rowan understood that. No amount of wealth could ease the uncertainty and fear twisting inside him. If those twins were his, he had almost lost the only family that might truly matter. And if they weren't, then he truly had nothing, despite all his billions. With a heavy heart, Rowan headed off to get the samples tested, the sterile envelopes clutched in his hand like lifelines. Behind him, in room 204, Zara held her newborns close, silent tears of heartbreak, and relief mingling on her cheeks as she braced herself for whatever truths tomorrow would bring. Stepping into the cool night air outside the hospital, Rowan barely noticed the city lights glittering around him. His mind was miles away, lost in the swirling storm of what-ifs. With the DNA test samples secured and sent off to a private lab for expedited results, all he could do now was wait. And as he sank into the back seat of his chauffeured town car, he felt the past rushing up to meet him. Memories he had long tried to bury clawed their way back to the surface. He closed his eyes and let out a shuddering breath. Instantly, he was transported to another time, another life it seemed, back to when Zara Carter first entered his world. 5 years earlier, Rowan first met Zara on a crisp autumn morning in downtown Chicago. He'd been running late to a board meeting and, in a rare lapse of attention, nearly bowled over a young woman carrying a stack of files in the lobby of Kingsley Enterprises headquarters. The files went flying, papers scattering across the marble floor. "I am so sorry." Rowan had apologized immediately, dropping to one knee to help gather the strewn documents. He was accustomed to people recognizing him, his face occasionally in business magazines as the heir and CEO of his family's investment firm, but this woman didn't seem to know or care who he was. She was more concerned with the papers. "It's okay, really," she said, her tone polite but a bit flustered. Rowan remembered looking up at that moment and being struck by her face. Zara's skin was a warm mahogany, her dark eyes focused on the documents. A few loose curls escaped from the bun at the nape of her neck, and when she tucked them back, leaving a faint streak of ink on her cheek, he found himself smiling despite the situation. They gathered the last of the papers. As she straightened up, Zara let out a breath and gave a small laugh. "Well, that's one way to introduce myself on the first day," she joked wryly, hugging the stack of files. Only then did she really look at Rowan, and he saw a flicker of realization in her eyes. Perhaps recognizing him, or at least noting his tailored suit and air of authority. "First day?" Rowan asked, intrigued and slightly charmed by how she'd made a joke instead of getting upset. He handed her the now slightly crumpled folder in his hand. "Yes," she replied with an embarrassed smile. "First day as an intern in the accounting department, and here I am, making a mess in the lobby." Rowan found himself smiling more. "I've made bigger messes on more important days. Trust me." He offered a hand. "I'm Rowan, by the way." Zara shifted the files to her other arm and shook his hand. "Zara Carter. Nice to meet you, Rowan." She said his first name easily, not yet connecting him as Mr. Kingsley. He was both surprised and refreshed by it. Before he could say more, a stern voice called from across the lobby. "Miss Carter, there you are. I need those files right away." An older woman with a no-nonsense expression, likely the accounting manager, hurried over. She barely spared Rowan a glance as she ushered Zara toward the elevators. Zara gave Rowan an apologetic wave as she was whisked away. And that was it. A brief chance encounter. Yet Rowan found himself thinking about the new intern with a bright laugh and ink-smeared cheek throughout the day. In the weeks that followed, he saw Zara around the office occasionally. She was diligent and sharp, more than once. He overheard colleagues praising the intern's quick mind and positive attitude. Rowan made excuses to pass by the accounting department, catching glimpses of Zara focused on spreadsheets or chatting amicably with co-workers. He felt a spark of interest that he tried to temper. After all, he was CEO, and she a new intern. Workplace relationships were complicated, yet he couldn't ignore the pull he felt. A month later, at the company's Thanksgiving charity gala, fate gave him another opportunity. Zara attended, helping staff the event as part of her internship duties. Dressed in a simple emerald green dress, she looked both professional and stunning. Rowan couldn't take his eyes off her as she organized silent auction items with a quiet efficiency. Halfway through the evening, Rowan approached her at the punch bowl, mustering a casual tone. "Glad to see you weren't scared off after that little collision on your first day," he teased gently. Zara turned and gave him a genuine smile. "Oh, hi, Rowan. No permanent damage done. Except maybe to my pride," she replied. Then, glancing around at the opulent ballroom filled with Chicago's elite, she added with a playful whisper, "Though I am terrified of spilling something on these expensive-looking people tonight." Rowan chuckled. "Don't worry. Most of them can afford a dry cleaner," he joked, and she laughed. Buoyed by her laughter, he offered her a glass of the non-alcoholic punch she'd been ladling. "Take a break. You've earned it." She hesitated. "If my supervisor sees me, I'll personally vouch for you," Rowan promised. He leaned in conspiratorially. CEO's orders. Zara's eyes widened, and she nearly choked on the sip of punch she'd taken. "See CEO?" she stammered. Clearly she hadn't realized until just now. Rowan gave a modest shrug. I prefer Rowan. Her cheeks flushed with embarrassment. Oh my gosh. I'm sorry, Mr. Kingsley. I mean Rowan. I didn't. He raised a hand, gently cutting her off. It's fine, really. I'm off the clock tonight. He smiled to put her at ease. So, how are you finding the internship so far? Zara relaxed a fraction, still clearly surprised that the CEO was making small talk with her. But she answered earnestly, telling him about what she'd learned and how. She hoped to leverage the experience to launch her career in finance. She was ambitious but humble, radiating passion when she talked about her dreams. Rowan found himself even more drawn to her. She spoke with intelligence and heart, a combination he found rare in the circles he moved in. One conversation turned into several over the course of the night. Whenever Rowan could slip away from obligatory mingling, he sought Zara out. They shared laughs as he recounted a few humorous anecdotes about the company's early days, and she told him about her family back home in Detroit, her mom who raised her and her younger brother on her own, instilling in Zara the values of hard work and honesty. Rowan admired the sparkle in her eyes as she talked about her mother. A mother's strength is unmatched, especially when she stands alone, he thought, recalling the saying as Zara described how her mom worked 2 jobs to support them. He felt a pang of respect and empathy, realizing how different Zara's upbringing was from his own life of privilege. By the end of the gala, Rowan knew he wanted to see Zara again, outside of work if possible. But he was cautious. He didn't want to put her in an uncomfortable position given his role. So he simply thanked her for the lovely conversation and wished her luck with the rest of her internship. Zara, smiling warmly, thanked him for treating her like a guest rather than just staff that night. They parted with a friendly handshake, but Rowan's heart was already yearning for more. Over the next few weeks, Rowan couldn't get Zara out of his mind. He found himself looking for reasons to visit the accounting floor, or scheduling meetings that intersected with her department's work. He even reviewed some of the intern project reports personally, something he rarely did, just to leave comments and see her reactions. Zara's work was excellent, and she responded to feedback with gratitude and eagerness to improve. Finally, as the winter holidays approached, Rowan decided to take a chance. Under the guise of discussing her future career plans, he invited Zara to lunch off-site. He assured her it was a casual mentorship meeting. She accepted, and that lunch turned into 2 hours of lively conversation at a cozy cafe, far from the corporate atmosphere. Away from the office, their connection blossomed. Zara was witty, insightful, and had a way of making Rowan laugh, really laugh, in a way he hadn't in years under the pressure of running a company. She confessed her initial intimidation at learning he was the CEO, and he admitted he found it refreshing that she treated him like a normal person. By dessert, the line between CEO and intern had blurred into simply a man and a woman genuinely enjoying each other's company. That day, as snow flurries swirled outside the cafe window, Rowan asked Zara if she'd accompany him to a new art exhibit the following weekend. It wasn't a work event, just a personal invitation. He held his breath, afraid he'd overstepped. But Zara's face lit up with a beautiful smile as she said yes. Their first official date was magical. Walking through the art gallery, they talked in hushed tones about the paintings and sculptures. But more often, they found themselves drifting into conversations about their own lives, hopes, fears, funny childhood stories. Afterwards, they strolled down the city sidewalk with hot coffees in hand, to ward off the chill, and Rowan dared to gently take her free hand in his. When she didn't pull away, his heart did a little flip. It began a whirlwind romance. Love requires courage, not control, and Rowan discovered he had the courage to follow his heart with Zara, even if it defied expectations. To hell with the unspoken rules, he requested that Zara be transferred to a different department under a different supervisor to eliminate any direct reporting conflict, and once that was done, he openly courted her. Some colleagues whispered, and his family certainly had opinions, but Rowan didn't care. He was falling deeply in love. For Zara, dating the CEO was surreal at first, but Rowan made her feel seen and cherished, not like a conquest or an accessory as some wealthy men might. He took her to jazz clubs and her favorite bookshop, not just fancy restaurants. He remembered things she said, like how she loved lilies. He'd fill her apartment with them on her birthday, and how she missed her brother Rowan, arranged to fly him out for a surprise visit. He was thoughtful and attentive, and Zara gave Rowan something he'd been missing, genuine warmth and normalcy amid his high-flying life. With her, he could relax and be himself, not the calculating businessman or the heir under pressure. Within a year, they were inseparable. Rowan proposed to Zara on a summer evening, on the rooftop of his penthouse with the Chicago skyline twinkling around them. He had decked the roof garden in fairy lights and lilies, playing her favorite soul ballads in the background. Zara tearfully said yes, tackling him in a hug before he even finished asking. They laughed, cried, and danced under the stars that night. Their wedding was intimate but elegant, just close friends and a few family members on a lakeside estate. Rowan remembered the way Zara looked walking down the aisle, absolutely breathtaking, glowing with love and a hint of happy tears. He remembered the vows they wrote, promises of loyalty, honesty, and facing every challenge together. At the reception, they had danced barefoot on the grass, not caring about decorum, making everyone laugh as they pulled others to join them. It was a day filled with joy and hope. In those early days of marriage, Rowan felt like he was living a dream. They moved into a beautiful penthouse, yet Zara insisted on keeping certain routines normal. They still cooked breakfast together on Saturdays, often ending up in playful, pancake batter fights that left the kitchen a mess, and them in fits of giggles. She challenged him when he worked too late, playfully dragging him off to bed or to watch a silly movie to unwind. He, in turn, supported her career aspirations. When her internship ended, he made some calls and got her a great job offer at a partner financial firm. With her permission, Zara proved herself there, quickly rising on her own merits, which made him proud. They talked about the future often. Kids were a part of those talks. Both of them wanted a family someday, but they agreed there was no rush. Sometimes Rowan would come home to find Zara dozing on the couch with a baby name book on her lap, which always made him smile. He'd envision a little girl with Zara's eyes, or a boy with her bright smile and his hair. The idea of children with her felt right, though he didn't voice it too often, not wanting to pressure her. Life wasn't perfect, of course. Rowan's work could be all-consuming, and he had to check himself not to neglect their time together. Zara had her own stresses, proving herself in her new job without any favoritism. They had minor arguments, like Rowan's tendency to try to fix her problems with money or influence, when sometimes all she wanted was to vent and have him listen. And Zara's independence, which Rowan loved, sometimes made her bristle at the luxuries he could easily provide. If her car had trouble, he'd want to buy her a new one immediately, whereas she insisted on budgeting for repairs or replacing it herself. Love requires courage, not control, Rowan. She'd gently remind him if he tried to take over her decisions. I love that you want to help, but I need to stand on my own feet too. He would always relent, reminded that her strength and self-reliance were part of what made him love her so much. Looking back on those moments now, sitting in the dark car outside his penthouse, Rowan felt his throat tighten. How had things gone so wrong? They had been so happy, so in love. Money can buy comfort, but it can't buy character, loyalty, or family. Zara had taught him that by example. She was a woman of character and loyalty who valued family deeply. And yet, in spite of all their love, something had broken that trust. He ran a hand over his face, pain seeping through him. The memories of joy were inevitably tangled with the memories of how it all fell apart. With a deep breath, Rowan steeled himself to relive the darkest chapter of their story, the events that led to the misunderstanding and betrayal that still haunted him. The first cracks in their blissful life appeared subtly, like hairline fractures that neither noticed until it was too late. After a year of marriage, reality seeped in. Rowan's company was expanding aggressively, and he spent longer hours at the office or on business trips. Zara's career was also taking off at the financial firm where she worked. She had to put in extra effort to prove herself, often staying late to finish projects. They were both ambitious and hard-working, but sometimes their demanding schedules meant missed dinners and lonely nights. During one particularly hectic month, Rowan found himself coming home well past midnight for the third time that week. He entered the penthouse to find Zara asleep on the couch, a cold plate of homemade lasagna on the counter covered in foil. She had waited for him with dinner, again, and he hadn't made it. Guilt gnawed at him as he gently roused her. Zara woke with a start, then gave him a tired smile. "Hey you," she murmured, sitting up and brushing hair from her face. "I tried to stay up." Rowan sat next to her and pulled her into a hug. "I'm sorry," he whispered into her hair. "The meeting ran late and then there were some overseas calls. I should have messaged you." She snuggled into his chest, forgiving as ever. "It's okay. I know it's a busy time." But her eyes were sad despite her words, and Rowan hated himself at that moment for neglecting her. He vowed to make it up to her. That weekend, he surprised Zara with a day trip to a quaint lake town upstate for just the two of them. They left their phones off and strolled hand in hand by the water, enjoying a break from responsibilities. As they sat on the dock with their feet dangling over the water, Zara leaned her head on his shoulder. "I miss this," she admitted softly. Rowan kissed her forehead. "Me too. I'm sorry I've been so busy. I promise, once this merger is settled, I'll have more free time. We'll get back to our rhythm." She smiled, lifting her face to meet his eyes. "As long as we face it together," she said, "I can handle anything." Looking into her eyes then, Rowan believed it wholeheartedly. They shared a gentle kiss, the sun setting golden around them, and for a moment, everything felt right again. But life continued to throw challenges. Rowan's mother had been civil at the wedding, but as time went on, she grew increasingly critical of Zara. Initially, she voiced it only to Rowan, comments about how Zara didn't come from our world, or worries that Zara might be more interested in the Kingsley fortune than her marriage. Rowan always defended his wife staunchly. "You don't know her like I do, Mother. Zara's love isn't about money," he'd snap, cutting those conversations short. Still, the disapproval weighed on him. He tried not to let it show, but Zara could sense the tension whenever they visited his family's estate. Meanwhile, at Zara's workplace, an unexpected complicating factor emerged. A new colleague joined her team, a charismatic financial analyst named Damien Shaw. Damien was friendly, perhaps overly so, and seemed to single out Zara from the start, asking for her help on projects and eating lunch with her often. Zara mentioned Damien in passing to Rowan, always in the context of work, and she laughed off his flirtatious remarks. "He's harmless," she said once, when Rowan had raised an eyebrow at a story of Damien bringing her coffee every morning for a week. "Just a flirt by nature. And besides, I wear my wedding ring proudly at work." Rowan forced a chuckle then, but something about Damien's constant hovering around Zara irked him more than he wanted to admit. He trusted Zara completely, or so he told himself, but he didn't trust this new co-worker who apparently couldn't take a hint. One evening, Rowan came to pick Zara up from her office as a surprise so they could have a dinner date. As he approached the glass door of her firm, he saw Zara and Damien standing by her desk. Damien was leaning casually, too close for Rowan's liking, showing her something on his phone. Zara laughed at whatever it was, playfully nudging Damien's arm as one might with a friend. Rowan felt a stab of jealousy. He entered before his thoughts ran away, and Zara greeted him with delight and a kiss, clearly happy he was there. She introduced Damien to Rowan cheerfully. Damien shook Rowan's hand with a charming smile, but Rowan couldn't miss the brief look that flickered in the man's eyes, a hint of disappointment or envy as he regarded Rowan. That night, Rowan was quieter than usual during dinner. When Zara asked, he brushed it off, not wanting to seem jealous. He didn't want to spoil their date night with his insecurities. But as the weeks went on, Damien's name popped up a bit too frequently for Rowan's comfort. Zara talked about her team's successes, often crediting Damien for his clever ideas, always with a casual, friendly tone. Rowan began to wonder if there was something more in her voice when she spoke about him, a spark of admiration maybe. He hated the thought. At the same time, Rowan's best friend and business partner, Preston Hale, started dropping comments that fed those seeds of doubt. Preston was one of the few people Rowan had confided in about his concerns. One Friday, after a late meeting, Preston and Rowan were having drinks in Rowan's home office. Preston swirled his whiskey and said, "You know, I bumped into an acquaintance who works near Zara's building. He mentioned he saw her getting lunch with some tall guy pretty often. You sure everything's okay there?" Rowan bristled. "If you have something to say, just say it, Preston." Preston sighed, feigning reluctance. "Look, Rowan, I'm just looking out for you. You're like a brother to me. It's probably nothing, but with you working so much and Zara over there making new friends, I just think you should be careful. Sometimes people aren't what they seem." He tossed back his drink and avoided Rowan's sharp gaze. It wasn't a direct accusation, but it planted a poisonous idea in Rowan's mind. What if Zara felt lonely with him so busy and found comfort in someone else's company? He hated himself for even considering it, but the idea gnawed at him late at night when he was alone and stressed. Zara had never given him real reason to doubt her, but his mother's words about Zara not fitting in and Preston's hints about her co-worker began to fester into insecurity. The stress of balancing his empire and his marriage was taking a toll. Small disagreements between Rowan and Zara started to escalate beyond what they should. One night, Zara gently confronted him. "You've been so distant lately. Is everything okay? You know you can talk to me." Her eyes searched his, full of concern and love. Rowan was exhausted and troubled by a failed deal that day, and instead of opening up, he snapped, "I'm fine. I'm just under a lot of pressure. Not everything is about us, Zara." She recoiled at his harsh tone. I never said it was. I'm worried about you." He sighed, immediately regretting his words. "I know. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to snap." He pulled her into a hug, and she melted against him after a moment, forgiving, as always. But Rowan felt the wedge of guilt push deeper. He wasn't being fair to her, but he couldn't shake the anxiety that he was somehow failing at everything: work, marriage, all of it. As winter set in, Zara got busier too. She and Damien were assigned to a major project together that required some late nights. Zara always told Rowan beforehand she had nothing to hide, and she often invited him to drop by the office if he wanted to take her to a late dinner after. Sometimes he did, bringing takeout for the whole team and stealing a few kisses from his wife in the break room, much to her colleagues' delight. Other times, he couldn't get away from his own responsibilities. One snowy evening, Rowan was heading out of his building when he received a text from Preston. "You should check on your wife's Facebook." Frowning, Rowan opened the app and navigated to Zara's profile. They rarely used social media much, but she had recently posted some photos from her office holiday party that he hadn't seen yet. As he swiped through them, one image made his heart drop into his stomach. It was a group photo of Zara's team. Zara stood smiling in the middle, and next to her Damien had his arm casually around her shoulders, both of them grinning and looking quite comfortable together. It was an innocent group shot, but Rowan couldn't see past Damien's arm on Zara. Jealousy flared, hot and irrational. Preston's message pinged again, not trying to stir trouble, but people talk. "Thought you should be aware." That cryptic message only fueled Rowan's imagination. That night, when Zara came home, cheeks flushed from the cold and eyes bright from a cheerful night, she was met with an icy reception. Rowan confronted her about the photo. "Why is his arm around you like that?" he demanded, unable to hide the jealousy in his voice. Zara, taken aback by his tone, tried to soothe him. "Rowan, it was just a friendly photo. The whole team was posing, and Damien was standing next to me, that's all. There were like 20 people there, including my boss." "He seems awfully comfortable with you," Rowan muttered. "Too comfortable." She frowned, a flicker of irritation crossing her face. "He's a colleague and a friend. Please, you have nothing to worry about. You know I love you." Rowan knew this logically, but the image and Preston's insinuations had worked their way under his skin. Instead of dropping it, he pushed further. "I trust you, Zara, but I don't trust him. The way he looks at you, everyone can see it." Zara's shoulders tensed. "I can't control how he looks at me. I've done nothing wrong." Do you want me to quit my job just because a co-worker has a crush or something? That's absurd, Rowan. Of course I don't want you to quit. Rowan struggled, unsure what he was even asking for. Maybe set some boundaries. I don't know. It just doesn't sit right with me. Zara stared at him for a moment, disbelief in her eyes. I have boundaries. I've done everything to show I'm committed to you. If you're feeling insecure, that's about you, not me. Her words hit a nerve. Rowan's pride bristled. Insecure? Maybe I have a right to be. You spend more time with him these days than with me. At that, Zara fell silent, hurt evident on her face. Quietly, she replied, I spend time at work, Rowan, and I would spend more time with you if you were home more. This goes both ways. Rowan opened his mouth to retort, but realized he had no good answer. She was right. He'd been absent often. The argument fizzled as quickly as it started. Rowan pulled Zara into a gentle apology hug, whispering that he was sorry. She nodded against his chest, though her body remained stiff for a few long seconds before she relaxed. They didn't discuss Damien further that night, but the issue lingered like a dark cloud not fully dispelled. The breaking point arrived on a frigid night in late February, nearly 2 years into their marriage. By then, the once unshakable trust between Rowan and Zara had been eroded by stress, insecurity, and outside influence. Unbeknownst to Zara, Rowan had been grappling with a private heartbreak of his own. They hadn't conceived any child. Despite not using protection for a while, and a quiet visit Rowan made to a specialist revealed a problem. The doctor's words had been sympathetic but crushing. Rowan's chances of fathering a child were low due to a medical issue. He hadn't worked up the courage to tell Zara, not wanting to dash her hopes or feel inadequate in her eyes. Instead, he carried that burden alone, fear gnawing at him that he might never give her the family they talked about. It was a secret wound, and it fed his sense of insecurity. On that fateful night, snowflakes swirled in the glow of street lamps as Rowan drove to Zara's office. She was working late yet again with Damien to finalize a critical project. Rowan, stirred by a mix of longing and jealousy, decided to pick up takeout from her favorite Thai place and surprise her team with dinner. Perhaps a kind gesture would ease the tension that had built up over the past weeks. As he pulled up to the office building, he noticed only a few lights on, one of them being in Zara's corner of the floor. The cleaning crew was just leaving, and they let him in, knowing him from prior visits. Takeout bag in hand, Rowan quietly made his way through the silent hall. He was about to round the corner to Zara's section when he heard raised voices, a man's voice and Zara's. I appreciate it, but I can't, Damien, he heard Zara say, her tone strained. Rowan's heart lurched. He pressed back against the wall just out of sight, instinctively eavesdropping. His pulse pounded in his ears. Why not? Came Damien's voice, sounding frustrated and hurt. Zara, anyone can see how well we get along. You're amazing. You deserve someone who's there for you, not someone who's hardly ever around. Rowan's grip tightened on the takeout bag handles. The delicious smell of pad thai and curry now made him sick. He held his breath, heart thundering. Damien, stop! Zara hissed, and Rowan risked a peek around the corner. He saw them in the dim light of her cubicle area. Zara was standing, arms folded, looking uncomfortable. Damien was close, too close, his face etched with desperation. Just hear me out, Damien pleaded, gently touching her arm. Zara stepped back, removing his hand firmly. No, I need you to hear me, Zara said, her voice low and fierce. I love my husband. I will never betray him. You're my friend and colleague, but this ends now. I can't work with you if you continue like this. Relief and gratitude surged in Rowan's chest at her words. She was rejecting him outright. But before Rowan could step forward and intervene, Damien made one last desperate move. I'm sorry, I just can't help it, he said. And suddenly he leaned in, trying to kiss Zara. Zara turned her face away and pushed against Damien's chest. Enough, she exclaimed, angrily. That was Rowan's cue. Seeing Damien attempting to force a kiss on Zara ignited a fury unlike any he'd felt. He tossed the takeout bag aside and stormed forward. "Get your hands off my wife," he bellowed. Both Zara and Damien jumped. Damien spun around just in time for Rowan's fist to collide with his jaw. The punch sent Damien reeling backward into a desk, toppling a pencil cup and some files. Zara gasped. "Rowan," she cried, rushing forward to grab his arm before he could lunge again. "Stop!" Rowan shook with rage, shrugging off Zara's hold, though he did not throw a second. Punch, as Damien regained his balance, holding a hand to his bruised jaw. "Are you crazy?" Damien spat, eyes flashing. "You have no idea." "Shut up," Rowan growled. "You think you can put your hands on my wife and get away with it?" Damien looked from Rowan to Zara, realizing perhaps for the first time the depth of trouble he'd just landed in. "Zara, He started to speak, but Zara held up a hand, her own expression livid. "No, Damien. You need to leave," she said firmly, pointing towards the exit. "Now. We'll discuss your behavior with HR in the morning." Her voice was cold and resolved. Damien opened his mouth as if to protest, but one glance at Rowan's murderous glare made him think better of it. He grabbed his coat from a chair and slunk away, casting one apologetic, longing look at Zara. Rowan stepped forward as if to chase him out, and Zara quickly stepped in front of her husband, placing both hands on his chest. "He's leaving, Rowan." "It's over," she said softly. The office fell silent, save for both Rowan's and Zara's heavy breathing. Rowan watched Damien disappear down the hallway, then looked down at Zara. His adrenaline was still pumping. Zara's hands remained on his chest. He could feel the rapid beat of her heart through her touch. For a moment, the reality of what happened set in. She had rejected Damien, defended their marriage. Relief started to flood Rowan. "Zara, are you okay? Did he hurt you?" he asked. His voice rough but gentle as he brushed a knuckle against her cheek, searching her face. Zara exhaled shakily. "I'm fine, just angry and shaken. I'm so sorry you had to see that. I was about to call you actually to come get me because he was getting out of hand." She closed her eyes, pained. "I never wanted you to doubt me, Rowan." Rowan pulled her into a tight embrace, wrapping his arms around her. "I heard you," he murmured into her hair. "I heard what you told him. You chose me, Zara. You always chose me." His own eyes burned with unshed tears of gratitude and shame for having doubted her even a second. She held on to him, trembling slightly from the adrenaline dump. "Of course I chose you. I vowed to you, didn't I?" She whispered. "I love you, Rowan. Only you." He pulled back to look at her, intending to apologize for his jealousy. But before he could speak, Zara's gaze drifted to the crumpled takeout bag on the floor. Spilled containers of curry now seeping into the carpet where Rowan had thrown it. A strained laugh bubbled out of Zara. You brought dinner?" she asked, half amused and half on the verge of tears at the absurdity of it all. Rowan managed a sheepish smile. "Your favorite tie. I wanted to surprise you and your team." "Some surprise, huh?" She cupped his face with her hand, eyes soft. "Thank you. The thought means a lot." He leaned into her palm, covering it with his own. "I'm just sorry I didn't come sooner." His jaw tightened at the memory of Damien's hands on her. Zara shook her head. "It's over now. Let's just go home." They left the office together, arm in arm. The snow had stopped outside, leaving a fresh white blanket on the streets. Under the streetlights, they walked to Rowan's car. Zara's heels slipped on a patch of ice, and Rowan steadied her, both of them, laughing shakily. Relief making them almost giddy after the confrontation. But the events of that night were not entirely behind them. Unseen, the seeds of doubt had left residue. Rowan's mind kept replaying Damien's words. "You deserve someone who's there for you, not someone who's hardly around." And even though Zara had rejected Damien, that line fed Rowan's guilt and fear. The next day, to report Damien's misconduct. The report was made, and Damien was promptly fired for harassment. To Rowan's surprise, though, Zara decided to take a short leave from work after that incident, citing stress. She said she needed time to regroup, and she worked from home for a while on independent projects. Rowan supported her decision, thinking a break was wise. For a brief period, it seemed they were stronger than ever. The ordeal had reminded Rowan how precious Zara was to him, and he made a point to spend more time at home, even delegating more tasks to others at work. They fell back into a comfortable rhythm. They cooked together, cuddled by the fireplace on cold nights, and talked about moving past what happened. Zara even joked that at least now he didn't have to worry about Damien's flirting anymore. Yet, under the surface, Rowan's unresolved secret and pride festered. He still hadn't told Zara about his fertility issue. He began researching treatments in secret, feeling the pressure of time. At random moments, he'd catch Zara looking wistfully at babies in the park or smiling at children in a grocery store, and it would gut him. He wondered if she regretted not having a child yet, if she secretly longed for motherhood more than she let on. His shame at possibly depriving her of that made him withdraw at times, lost in thought. Meanwhile, Preston continued to offer his support in subtle ways. Over drinks one evening at the club, he remarked, heard Zara's taking a break from work. "Everything okay? She's not meeting that guy anymore at least, right?" Rowan had bristled and told him off for bringing it up, but the damage was done. Preston's words made him think that others were gossiping, that perhaps people thought Zara had given Damien reason to pursue her. It was irrational, but Rowan's pride couldn't let it go completely. He hated the idea that anyone might see him as a fool in love. A few weeks later, another blow came. Rowan's mother, who had gotten wind of the Damien incident through social channels, invited herself over under the guise of concern. While Zara was out visiting a friend, his mother confronted him in the study. "Is it true some man at her work was sniffing around her?" she asked, faux sympathy in her tone. "It's handled, Mother," Rowan said curtly, not wanting to discuss it. She pursed her lips. "Handled or not, it's a bad sign. A married woman should never allow such familiarity. If she conducted herself properly, he wouldn't have dared. Perhaps if you had married someone more suited to our circle, you wouldn't be dealing with this public embarrassment." Rowan saw red. "This is none of your concern," he snapped. "Zara did nothing wrong. That man was out of line, and he's gone now." His mother sighed, as if she pitied his naivety. "You're blinded by love, Rowan. I just hope she's worthy of the faith you put in her." He practically escorted his mother out the door after that, furious on Zara's behalf. Yet, his mother's insinuations still hit a sore spot, because they echoed that tiny voice of doubt he thought he'd silenced. He tried to ignore it, but the wound to his pride and trust wasn't fully healed. The final straw came one evening when Rowan returned home from work earlier than expected. He found Zara in their bedroom, sitting on the edge of the bed with her laptop and papers spread around. She looked up, surprised. "You're home early," she said with a smile that quickly faded when she saw his tense expression. "Is everything okay?" Rowan had just come from a meeting with a fertility specialist, one who suggested that if Rowan's condition was severe, alternatives like IVF with donor sperm could be considered. The idea devastated him, and he hadn't shared this with Zara. His emotions were raw. Instead of greeting her warmly, Rowan noticed an open notebook by Zara's side with scribbles. Before she could close it, he saw it was filled with budget notes, cost estimates for a baby. Items like crib, stroller, diapers and savings plans for maternity leave. It looked like Zara had been secretly budgeting and planning for a child, maybe even a loan. Something in Rowan snapped. All the fear, guilt, and lingering mistrust coalesced into a terrible assumption. He looked at Zara with pained eyes. "When were you going to tell me?" he asked quietly, holding up the notebook. "Are you planning to have a baby without me?" Zara's eyes widened in shock. "What? No, Rowan, I like to plan for the future, that's all. We've talked about having kids one day, and I wanted to make sure we're financially ready whenever that time comes." "Why would you ask it like that?" He realized how accusatory his tone was. He was accusing her of something outrageous, but the image of Damien and her, together, combined with this secret baby planning and his own inability, it twisted into a dark thought. What if she was thinking of having a child by herself, or with someone else, since he might not be able to? "You've been making a lot of plans in secret," he said bitterly. "First hiding what was going on with Damien until it boiled over. Now this." Zara stood, anger flashing in her eyes. "I didn't hide anything about Damien. I handled it. And this," she pointed at the notebook in his hand, "this is me being responsible and hopeful for our future. How dare you twist it into something ugly?" Rowan's temper, frayed and unstable, flared. "Maybe because I don't know what to think anymore," he shouted. "Ever since that man came into our lives, nothing's been the same. I'm constantly wondering what else I don't know." She looked at him in disbelief. "You think I'm hiding something else?" "What, exactly, Rowan? Spit it out." His pride and pain spoke for him. Maybe those rumors were true," he said, instantly regretting it, but unable to stop. "Maybe I've been a fool. You seem pretty focused on having a baby all of a sudden. Tell me, were you planning to replace me if I was too busy? Is that why he thought he had a chance with you?" Zara's face went pale, then flushed with fury. "How dare you?" she whispered, voice shaking. "After everything, after I shut him down, after I stood by you, you think I would ever do that to you?" Rowan realized he had gone way too far. "Zara, I'm sorry, I didn't mean," he started, reaching for her, remorse flooding him. She stepped back out of reach, tears welling in her eyes. "No, Rowan. You did mean it, somewhere inside, or you wouldn't have said it." Her voice broke. "The fact you could even think that of me, it hurts more than anything Damien ever did." He was desperate to fix it now. "It's not that I think you would. I'm scared, Zara." He finally confessed, tears of his own threatening. "I'm scared of losing you. I'm scared of not being enough. I'm scared that I can't give you the life you want." She looked confused through her grief and anger. "What are you talking about? You've given me everything I want. All I want is you," she cried. Rowan hesitated. Was this the moment to tell her the truth? To lay bare his deepest insecurity about children? His mouth opened, but the words stuck in his throat. "Healing begins the moment pride ends," a wise voice in his mind whispered. But pride, that insidious thing, still held him back. He couldn't bear the thought of confirming his worst fear, that he was broken, and she might pity him. Instead of the truth, Rowan blurted something terrible. "Maybe I'm not enough for you, Zara. Maybe I never was," he said, voice cracking. Zara's eyes blazed, hurt and anger crashing over her features. "If you really believe that, if you can't see what you mean to me, then I don't know how to fix this." There was a long, agonizing moment of silence, two hearts breaking simultaneously in that quiet bedroom. A marriage hanging by the barest thread. Rowan reached out once more, tears on his face now. "Please," he whispered, not even sure what he was asking for. Forgiveness, trust, understanding, all of it. But Zara, tears streaming, wrapped her arms around herself. "I can't do this anymore," she said softly. "I love you, Rowan, but I won't beg to be trusted. I know who I am, and I know what I've done and haven't done. If you don't know it, if you won't believe me, then what is there left for us?" He felt the world crashing down. "Are you," his voice shook, "are you saying you want to end this?" "Zara, no, she sobbed quietly, one hand covering her mouth. For a moment, she looked like she might say no. She didn't want that. But then something in her eyes steeled. A final drop of pride and self-preservation rising to the surface. "Maybe we need time apart," she managed to say. "Maybe you need to figure out what you truly want and whether you can ever trust me. And maybe I need to heal from all this hurt." Rowan tried to protest, but the lump in his throat choked his words. Within the hour, that time apart became a formal separation. Zara packed a bag to stay at her friend Candace's place for a while. Rowan was in shock, numb, as he watched the woman he loved walk out the door, tears in her eyes and no promise to return. A week later, pride and pain still ruling them both, Rowan and Zara met only briefly with lawyers. In a blur of heartbreak, they signed divorce papers. You can forgive someone without forgetting who you became without them. In the mirror of the lawyer's office bathroom after signing, Zara whispered, this to herself, promising that she could eventually forgive Rowan for his distrust, but she would never forget the strength she found in surviving without him during those lonely days. Rowan left that office feeling like he'd torn out his own heart. He told himself it was for the best. He was letting her go to be free of his flaws. But every step away from her felt wrong. Still, his pride wouldn't let him turn back. Neither of them would realize until much later that their story was not truly over. Destiny had other plans, in the form of two little lives that had already begun growing unbeknownst to them both. If you're feeling the weight of that heartbreak right now, you're not alone. This is the moment where everything changes, and I promise you, what comes next will shock you. If you're invested in finding out whether Rowan and Zara can overcome this, smash that like button and let me know in the comments, Team Rowan or Team Zara, who do you think was more at fault? And if you haven't subscribed yet, do it now, because the next part of this journey will have you on the edge of your seat. The day Zara walked out of Rowan's life, she felt as though the ground had been pulled from under her. In the weeks that followed, she moved through life in a daze of heartbreak. She stayed with her friend Candice initially, who offered a shoulder to cry on and a spare bedroom. Zara put on a brave face by day, focusing on job applications and trying to piece a plan for her future. But at night, she cried herself to sleep, mourning the life she had lost. Yet amid all that sorrow, life had one more surprise for Zara. About a month after the divorce was finalized, Zara realized her period was late. At first, she attributed it to stress. After all, her life had been turned upside down. But when nausea started greeting her every morning, a sinking suspicion grew. Heart pounding, she bought a pregnancy test. The two pink lines that appeared on the test changed everything. Zara stared at the result through tear-blurred eyes, one hand over her mouth. She was pregnant. And given the timing, there was no doubt in her mind. Rowan was the father. A whirlwind of emotions consumed her. Joy and awe at the tiny lives growing inside her warred with despair and fear. This should have been a moment of celebration with her husband, but they were no longer together. Would he even believe the babies were his, after all that happened? The memory of his accusations still stung like an open wound. Candice found Zara sitting on the bathroom floor, the positive test, clutched in her hand, and silent tears streaming down her cheeks. Kneeling beside her friend, Candice wrapped an arm around Zara. "We'll get through this," she whispered, even as her own eyes brimmed. "I'm here for you." In the days that followed, Zara agonized over whether to tell Rowan. Every time she picked up her phone to call him, her pride and the memory of their painful last fight held her back. What if he thought she was trying to trap him, or that she'd been unfaithful, and these weren't his? The very thought made her nauseous again. Eventually, she decided that she would raise this child on her own. She wouldn't subject herself to more suspicion or allow her child to be born into a tug-of-war of doubt. A mother's strength is unmatched, especially when she stands alone, Zara remembered. Her own mother's sacrifices and steeled herself to be just as strong. At her first prenatal visit, however, Zara got a double shock. An ultrasound revealed she wasn't just carrying one baby, but two. Twins. Zara laughed and cried at the revelation. It felt like fate, an overwhelming blessing and challenge at once. "You always did aim high, huh?" Candice teased gently when Zara told her, trying to lighten the mood. Zara managed a watery smile. Two babies. Two little pieces of Rowan and her that she would cherish, even if he would never know them. Financially, Zara knew it wouldn't be easy. She had left her old job after the incident with Damien and the divorce. Going back felt impossible under the cloud of gossip. Instead, she took on remote freelance accounting projects for smaller businesses, enough to scrape by. She moved out of Candice's place to a modest one-bedroom apartment she could afford, determined to stand on her own feet. She sold her engagement ring, the beautiful custom piece Rowan had given her, and put that money aside as a nest egg for the babies. It broke her heart to part with it, but keeping it hurt more. It felt like clinging to a shattered dream. Pregnancy alone was a test of endurance and willpower. Zara battled relentless morning sickness in the first trimester, often pausing work to run to the bathroom. There were days she couldn't keep much food down, and she'd lie in bed with a cold towel on her head, whispering to her belly that it would be okay. She talked to her unborn twins to keep herself calm. "We've got this, little ones," she would murmur. "Mommy's here. I'll keep you safe." Without Rowan's insurance or financial support, she never breathed. A word of her condition to him or his family. Zara had to be frugal. She couponed for groceries, bought maternity clothes second-hand, and learned to budget for 3 on a shoestring. Candace and a few friends threw her a small baby shower, gifting her some essentials. They begged her to reconsider telling Rowan. After all, he had every right to know, and his resources could ensure a comfortable life for the children. But Zara stood firm. Money can buy comfort, but it can't buy character, loyalty, or family, she said quietly. "I don't want his money. I wanted his trust, and he couldn't give me that. I'll manage. These babies will have everything I can give them." Her friends didn't press further, knowing how determined she was. As her belly grew, so did Zara's resolve. On lonely nights, she still felt the ache of Rowan's absence. She often dreamed he was beside her, hand on her belly, feeling the twins kick. But each morning, she steeled herself anew. She would not depend on anyone who saw her as unworthy or capable of betrayal. She threw herself into preparing for motherhood, attending prenatal classes alone, learning about twin births, and reading parenting books cover to cover. It was hard, and sometimes she cried from sheer exhaustion and hormones. But whenever she felt despair, she'd close her eyes and remember her mother's unwavering strength. If the truth doesn't come out, the pain will, and she carried the truth of Rowan, his children silently, bearing that pain so it wouldn't touch him or her babies. In her mind, she was shielding everyone the only way she knew how. In the final weeks of her pregnancy, Zara experienced complications. Perhaps it was the stress, or simply the nature of carrying twins, but she developed high blood pressure and signs of preeclampsia. Her doctor decided to induce labor a few weeks early for the safety of mother and babies. Candace was by her side at the hospital, holding Zara's hand through every contraction as they prepared for delivery. It was a difficult labor. After hours of effort, Zara delivered 2 tiny, beautiful babies, a girl and a boy, but not without scares. She hemorrhaged after the second twin was born and briefly lost consciousness. The medical team worked swiftly to stabilize her. It was the most harrowing and also the most miraculous day of Zara's life. When she woke, weak but alive, Zara found herself in a recovery room. 2 newborns slept in bassinets beside her, and Candace was gently dabbing Zara's forehead with a cool cloth, eyes red from crying and relief. "You scared me," Candace whispered. "But you're okay, and they're okay. 2 healthy babies, thank God." Zara's eyes filled as she reached out to hold her children for the first time. The nurse placed them in her arms, 2 warm bundles of pure love. One baby had a light dusting of fine blonde hair, the other had a curl of dark hair, both beautiful and perfect. Zara's heart overflowed. In that instant, every hardship and heartbreak seemed worth it. She had a new family now, even if it wasn't the one she once dreamed of. "Hi, my angels," she cooed softly, kissing each tiny forehead. A tear fell on her baby girl's cheek, and Zara gently wiped it away. "I'm so glad you're here." She named them Ariella and Elias, names she'd once daydreamed about with Rowan during happier times. Even though he wasn't here, she felt it was right. These children carried his legacy in their very DNA, and she wanted them to have names their father would have loved, had he known. Candace stayed with Zara as visiting hours waned, helping her feed the twins with their first bottles when Zara was too weak to nurse, and making sure Zara ate some dinner. As night fell, Candace gently broached the topic she'd held back on all day. "Zara, I really think you should tell Rowan. He deserves to know he's a father. And these babies, they deserve to know their dad." Zara looked down at her sleeping son and daughter, her expression torn. "He made his choice," she said quietly. "He didn't trust me. He didn't want us." Candace frowned. "He didn't know about them. And maybe he regrets everything. People can change, Zara. You always believe the best about people, except when it comes to forgiving yourself or Rowan. A conflict raged in Zara's eyes. Before she could answer, baby Ariella started fussing, and Zara gladly took the distraction, focusing on her child. She wasn't ready to have that conversation, even with her best friend. The wounds ran deep. Later that night, after Candace left, Zara found herself awake in the quiet hospital room, one baby asleep on her chest and the other in a bassinet beside her. The weight of what Candace said pressed on her. Was it really right to keep Rowan's children from him? She had been so sure, but now that they were here, the idea of them never knowing, their father, or Rowan never knowing them, tugged at her conscience. She remembered a lesson she had held close since her youth, one her mother taught her when her father had abandoned them. You can forgive someone without forgetting who you became without them. In leaving Rowan and surviving, Zara had become stronger, more self-reliant, a mother who would do anything for her kids. She could forgive him in time, perhaps, but she would never forget the strength she gained on her own. The question was, could she allow him back into her life in any capacity for the sake of Ariella and Elias? As Zara drifted to sleep that night, utterly exhausted, she decided she would think about it tomorrow. Little did she know fate, or rather Candace, had already intervened. Candace wrestled with her conscience all the way home, and ultimately she decided that whether Zara liked it or not, Rowan needed to know what had happened. If Zara hated her for it, so be it. At least Candace's godchildren, for she was. Sure, Zara would name her as such, would have the chance to know their father. So Candace made the call. She still had Rowan's number from 2 years ago, and thankfully it hadn't changed. When Rowan answered, groggy and confused at being awoken near midnight, Candace took a deep breath and said, "It's about Zara. You should know. She just had twins, Rowan, a boy and a girl. They're healthy, but she had a rough labor. She almost—" Candace's voice broke, remembering the scare. "She's okay now. But I thought you should be aware." Rowan was silent on the other end. In that silence, Candace could feel the shock. Finally he spoke, voice strangled. "Twins?" Zara had twins. Candace chose her words carefully. "Yes. I'm at St. Mary's Hospital with her. Rowan, I know things ended terribly between you two, but if there's any chance, I just think you needed to know." She didn't say outright that the babies were his. She didn't need to. The timeline would be obvious to him. After a long pause, Rowan simply said, "Thank you," and hung up. Candace sighed, hoping she'd done the right thing. She had no idea that Rowan would come barreling into the hospital less than an hour later, furious and confused and on a collision course with destiny, which is where their story picked up on that fateful encounter in the maternity ward. Rowan's life after Zara left became a shadow of what it once was. He moved through his days in a mechanical fashion. Meetings, deals, press appearances. Everything felt hollow without her. He remained in their penthouse, surrounded by echoes of her presence. At first, he couldn't bear to change a thing. Her clothes still hung in the closet where she left them, and her favorite mug remained on the kitchen shelf. But the silence in the rooms they once filled with laughter was deafening. In public, Rowan maintained his composed, successful CEO facade, but those close to him noticed the change. He spoke less, smiled rarely, and often lost himself in thought during board meetings. Preston tried to drag him out for drinks or distractions, but Rowan grew distant with him too, suspecting deep down how his friend's comments had fueled his paranoia. The thought that he'd allowed someone else's whisperings to destroy his marriage ate at him. One evening, not long after the divorce, Rowan confronted Preston in a low, tense voice. "I know you meant well, but I need space. I don't want to talk about Zara or what happened with you or anyone." Preston's defense that he was just trying to help rang hollow. Over time, Rowan drifted away from his old friend, burying himself in work instead. Rowan's mother attempted to set him up with daughters of her society friends, much to his irritation. At a charity gala about 6 months after the divorce, Rowan attended out of obligation and found himself politely cornered by an heiress his mother had in mind. She was perfectly nice and stylish, but as she spoke, Rowan realized he hadn't heard a word. He was too busy remembering how Zara had looked at the last gala they attended together, how she made a corny joke about the overpriced auction items that made him snort champagne up his nose. The memory hit him so hard he excused himself abruptly, leaving the baffled heiress mid-sentence. That night, he left the gala early and wandered the city for hours, ending up outside the apartment building where he knew Candice lived. He imagined Zara up there, perhaps looking out one of those windows. He almost buzzed to ask if she was there, but pride and fear held him back. What would he even say? He had broken her heart, and she had closed the door. Time marched on, and Rowan's external success only grew. Kingsley Enterprises sealed the big merger he'd been working on, doubling the company's value. The financial press dubbed him a visionary, a powerhouse. But every congratulatory message, every toast made in his honor, felt meaningless. At night, he sat alone in his vast penthouse, looking at the empty side of the bed, where Zara used to cuddle up to him, and wondered if he'd ever not feel so alone. He thought of reaching out to Zara countless times. Once, around what would have been their 3rd anniversary, he actually dialed her number. His heart raced as it rang, but it went to voicemail. Hearing her warm voice on the recording, "Hi, you've reached Zara, please leave a message," left him shattered all over again. He didn't leave a message. What could he possibly say? "I'm sorry I didn't trust you. I miss you every day. Please come back." He wasn't sure she'd even listen. Pride was still Rowan's downfall. He was too ashamed to apologize properly, too afraid she'd reject him outright if he tried. He kept tabs on her quietly instead. A discreet inquiry here, a mutual acquaintance there. He knew she'd resigned from her job. He heard she was doing freelance work. He learned from a mutual acquaintance that she had moved to a smaller place on the west side. That knowledge wounded him. She deserved so much more. Once, he even drove by her new address late at night, just to see if he could glimpse her silhouette in the window. But he saw nothing, and he berated himself for resorting to such forlorn measures. Alone in his office one evening, Rowan found himself scrolling through old photos on his phone. So many moments captured, Zara laughing at the beach, flour on her cheek from a baking experiment, the two of them cheek to cheek. At their wedding, eyes bright with hope, Zara asleep on his shoulder on a lazy Sunday morning, a content smile on her face. He realized he was crying, silent tears dripping onto the screen. "I'm sorry," he whispered to the empty room. It was his fault, all of it. If only he had swallowed his pride and fears and talked to her, trusted her, none of this would have happened. Months passed in this state of aching limbo. Rowan expanded his business to the West Coast, trying a change of scenery in hopes of forgetting. It didn't work. He only found himself missing Zara in new places. Every success was empty. At one point, Rowan considered therapy to sort out his feelings of guilt and grief, but he couldn't bring himself to share his pain with a stranger. Instead, he quietly funded a large donation to a women's shelter in the city in Zara's name, one that helped single mothers, perhaps as a subconscious way to atone and to honor the kind of values Zara held. What haunted Rowan most was the lack of closure. He had no idea how Zara truly felt about him now. Did she hate him? Had she moved on? The thought of her finding love with someone else was a knife twist he tried not to dwell on. More than once, he was tempted to ask Candice when he bumped into her whether Zara was seeing anyone. But Candice had been frosty with him post-divorce, understandably protective of her friend. And Rowan could never bring himself to do more than politely inquire, "She doing okay?" To which Candice would usually nod curtly and say, "She's fine," offering no details. In truth, Rowan was too consumed by self-loathing to even consider another relationship. He replayed that final fight with Zara 1,000,000 times in his mind, each time wishing he had just told her the truth, that he was scared about his fertility, that he loved her so much it made him irrationally afraid. He should have begged her forgiveness. He should have trusted the woman he knew better than anyone. Instead, he let his pride and fears drive her away. Healing begins the moment pride ends. He understood that now. He had been too proud back then to admit his weakness, and only when he lost everything did he realize humility would have saved him. Rowan often dreamed of Zara. In those dreams, she was smiling, holding a baby. Sometimes those dreams confused. him, but he wrote it off to his subconscious, playing out his lost hopes. Other times, she simply walked away no matter how much he ran after her. He would wake up with a clenched heart and an emptiness that refused to leave. On an unremarkable night in late fall, Rowan fell asleep in his home office, buried in work as usual. That's when his phone rang with a call from Candace, a call that jolted him awake and made his heart pound. Candace's words echoed in his ear long after he sprang to his feet and grabbed his coat and keys. Zara. Hospital. Twins. Rough labor. The implications were staggering. Twins. The word reverberated through him. Could it be? Realization washed over Rowan in equal parts hope and fury. Why hadn't anyone told him? How could Zara keep this from him, if indeed they were his? A flicker of doubt. Or had she truly moved on and they were another man's? But no, the timing. It had to be him. Which meant Zara had been pregnant when they split. His mind in chaos, Rowan raced to the hospital, breaking every speed limit, heart in his throat. Worry gnawed at him too. Candace mentioned Zara had a rough time. She'd said she's okay now, but also she almost... That incomplete sentence haunted him. Almost what? Almost died. The thought was too much to bear. If he had lost Zara without even getting to apologize, he shook the thought from his head as he screeched to a halt in the hospital parking lot. By the time Rowan stormed through the maternity ward to Zara's room, fury, fear, and overwhelming emotion propelled him. Candace had gone home by then, so Rowan came alone, practically vibrating with adrenaline. And then he saw Zara with those newborns, two tiny babies that he instantly felt connected to, even in his uncertainty. The sight was like a punch to the gut, stirring feelings he had kept locked away. In that hospital room, faced with the family that might have been his all along, Rowan's life changed forever. He just didn't know yet whether it was for better or for worse. True to his word, Rowan returned to the hospital the next day, just before noon. Zara had barely slept. The weight of the previous day's confrontation and the looming paternity test results hung over her like a fog. She'd been tending to the twins through the night with help from the nurses, trying to keep her mind from spiraling. Part of her dreaded the results, not because she doubted the truth, but because she feared what Rowan would do with that truth. Would he fight her for custody? Would he accuse her of deliberately hiding the children out of malice? Or, perhaps worst of all, would he show no interest in them at all, confirming her belief that he wanted no part in their lives? Candace had visited early that morning and informed Zara in a hesitant whisper that she had been the one to call Rowan. Zara had been upset at first, furious even, but her friend's remorseful face and explanation softened her resolve. Candace explained she couldn't in good conscience keep him unaware. Zara's near-death experience during delivery had shaken her. Finally, Zara relented with a sigh, too tired to hold a grudge. Deep down, she did understand Candace's reasoning, even if it hurt her pride. Now, mid-morning, Zara was alone with the twins dozing in their bassinet when Rowan knocked softly and stepped inside her room. He looked as if he'd lived a lifetime in the span of a night. Dark circles smudged under red-rimmed eyes, his usually immaculate hair was slightly disheveled, and he wore the same clothes from yesterday. In his hand, Zara noticed, he clutched a folded paper, no doubt the lab report. Their eyes met, and for a moment neither spoke. Zara's heart thudded painfully. Rowan's expression was unreadable, a storm of emotions held in check. He glanced at the sleeping infants, and something in his gaze gentled. "May I come in?" he asked quietly. Zara nodded silently. She was propped up in bed, wearing a fresh robe a nurse had helped her into. Her hair was down around her shoulders in loose curls. She looked exhausted, but in Rowan's eyes she was beautiful, radiant with the glow of new motherhood. The sight made his throat tighten. Rowan approached the foot of the bed, stopping at a respectful distance. He cleared his throat and held out the paper with a shaky hand. The test results came in earlier this morning. Zara didn't reach for the paper. She simply watched him, bracing herself. He unfolded it himself with a rustle and glanced at the words for what must have been the 20th time since he'd received it. His voice, when he read the pertinent line, was husky with emotion. Probability of paternity, 99.99%. In other words, I'm the father. They're mine. A silence followed that pronouncement. Zara closed her eyes, releasing a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. Even though she knew the truth, hearing it declared and hearing Rowan call them his was a weight off her chest. But it also brought forth a well of feelings she'd suppressed. Zara, Rowan began, taking a tentative step closer. His voice trembled. Why didn't you tell me? There was no anger in his tone now, only hurt, deep and raw. I missed everything. The pregnancy, their birth. I should have been here. His voice cracked, and he looked away, jaw tightening, as he tried to keep his composure. Zara felt tears pricking her eyes. Softly, with a hint of bitterness, she replied, "Would you have believed they were yours if I had told you?" Rowan's head snapped up, and he flinched as if struck. He opened his mouth, but no immediate answer came. His silence was answer enough. Zara nodded slightly, tears sliding down her cheeks now. "That's what I thought." She swallowed hard, trying to keep her voice steady. "You had accused me of unthinkable things, Rowan, when I found out I was pregnant. I was terrified. Terrified of how you'd react. I thought you'd call me a liar or claim I was trying to trap you with someone else's babies. I couldn't bear it." Her voice broke on the last words. Rowan moved to the side of the bed then, pulling a chair up without asking and sitting down, his face stricken. "Zara, I'm so sorry," he choked out. I was wrong about everything." He buried his face in his hands for a moment, gathering courage, then looked up at her, eyes shining with tears. "I need to explain, not to excuse, but to explain what I did, how I could have been such a fool." He inhaled shakily. "You deserved truth from me long ago. If the truth doesn't come out, the pain will. I kept too many truths from you before, and it caused us both so much pain. I don't want to hide anything anymore." Zara's brows knitted in slight confusion and curiosity. She said nothing, allowing him to continue. Rowan ran a hand through his hair, exhaling. "First, about Damien and all that. I let people get in my head. Preston, my so-called best friend, fed my doubts because he thought he was protecting me, or, I don't know, maybe he had his own agenda. My mother, too, she never fully accepted us. I was hearing all this noise about how you might not be trustworthy, and instead of shutting it out, I let it seep in. That was my failing." He paused, jaw clenched. "But the worst part is, I had my own secret fears that made it 10 times worse." He looked down at his hands, voice filled with shame. "Do you remember when we started talking about trying for a baby? How we assumed it would happen when it was meant to? Well, after a year with no news, I went to get myself checked. I didn't tell you because I didn't want you to worry. The doctor told me my chances, they were very low." His voice fell to a whisper. "I was effectively told I might not be able to have children." Zara's eyes widened in surprise. "Rowan, I didn't know." Her tone was soft, not accusatory, just surprised and sympathetic. He gave a sad smile. "Of course you didn't. I didn't give you a chance to know. Instead of trusting you with that pain, I kept it inside, and it festered. I was devastated. And when everything with that coworker happened, and I saw how he looked at you, some part of me twisted it into thinking you'd be better off with someone who could give you what I thought I couldn't. It's irrational and absurd, but at the time it felt real." He took a breath. "So, when you turned out to be pregnant, I was sure it couldn't be me. I had this medical proof in my head that it wasn't possible. Combine that with my jealousy and the lies I'd been fed. I falsely convinced myself our babies must have been another man's, and I can never apologize enough for that." Zara was silent, absorbing his confession. She remembered how he'd said, "I'm scared I can't give you the life you want," but she hadn't understood at the time. It hurt that he hadn't shared his struggles with her then, but seeing the anguish on his face now, she realized He had been punishing himself this whole time too. Rowan leaned forward, eyes pleading. I know none of this can undo what I did. It doesn't excuse that I didn't trust you. Love requires courage, not control. And I was a coward. I let my fear control me instead of having the courage to trust in your love and our love. Zara's lips trembled as he echoed the very words she used to tell him. The truth of it hung in the air. He continued, voice thick. Hurting you is the biggest regret of my life. Not a day went by that I didn't miss you. I thought I'd lost you forever, and I had no one to blame but myself and my damned pride. He wiped a tear that escaped his eye. When Candace called and told me about the twins, I was in shock. Part of me was angry, thinking you intentionally hid them out of hate for me. But another part of me was terrified you might have died, without me even knowing, or that they might not make it. I realized in that moment that nothing mattered more than making sure you and those babies were okay. And then, when I walked in and saw you with them, his voice caught. It was the most beautiful thing I've ever seen, Zara. It felt like a second chance I didn't deserve, placed right in front of me. Zara had to look away as fresh tears flowed. She remembered the look on his face when he first saw them. She'd been too guarded to fully register it, but hearing him describe it now touched her deeply. Rowan carefully reached out, and seeing she didn't pull away, gently took her hand in both of his. I know I have no right to ask for anything, but I'm begging for your forgiveness. You can hate me, you can yell at me, and I'll accept it all. I just want you to know I am so proud of you and so grateful for what you've done. You raised our children alone, Zara. You went through so much pain and sacrifice. His voice shuddered. Candace told me that there were complications. I almost lost you and I can't. He broke off, emotion choking him. Zara squeezed his hand then, instinctively comforting him. I'm okay, she whispered. I made it. Rowan brought her hand to his lips and kissed it softly, a gesture both humble and adoring. Thank God for that. And thank you for bringing these miracles into the world. He glanced at the babies with awe. One of them yawned and stretched a tiny hand out of the blanket. Both parents couldn't help but smile softly at the sight. Zara felt her guarded heart waver. This was the Rowan she had fallen in love with, the one who wasn't afraid to be gentle and sincere. He was showing her all his broken pieces with no bravado. But the hurt he'd caused wasn't something she could just forget in an instant. She withdrew her hand slightly, and Rowan let it go, bracing himself. I appreciate your apology, Zara said quietly, and I am glad you know the truth now. But Rowan, this isn't just about you and me anymore. I have to think about Ariella and Elias. At the mention of their names, Rowan's face lit up with a tender surprise. Ariella and Elias, he repeated softly, testing the names on his tongue. They're beautiful. He looked at Zara, as if realizing that she had chosen names with meaning. A tear slipped down his cheek. You gave them names we picked out together, didn't you? Zara nodded, biting her lip. During one of their happy late-night chats in the early marriage, they'd mused about baby names. Ariella, meaning Lioness of God, was a name Zara loved, and Elias, meaning The Lord is my God, was Rowan's favorite from a family name. It seemed so long ago now. Rowan was visibly moved. He gently stood and approached the bassinet. May I? He asked, looking to Zara. She gave a hesitant yes. With utmost care, Rowan lifted the baby girl, Ariella, cradling her in his arms for the first time. Ariella fussed for a moment, then settled against her father's chest as if she recognized a piece of herself there. Rowan let out a breath of amazement. He cradled her tiny head in his large hand, marveling at the softness. A smile broke through his tears as the baby peered up at him with drowsy, curious eyes. Hello, little one, Rowan whispered, rocking her gently. I'm your daddy. The words came out both joyful and broken with emotion. Ariella responded by making a small cooing sound, and Rowan chuckled softly, a sound of pure happiness. Watching from the bed, Zara felt something shift inside her. She saw the love on Rowan's face as he held their daughter. This was what she had always hoped for, what she had cried about on lonely nights. That if Rowan ever knew, he would accept and love their children wholeheartedly. And there he stood, completely enamored, tears of joy on his face as he experienced a piece of fatherhood he'd nearly missed. Rowan carefully placed Ariella back down as she began to fall asleep again, then lifted his son Elias into his arms. Elias scrunched his face and then promptly sneezed, making Rowan laugh. "Bless you," Rowan murmured, brushing a thumb over the baby's soft cheek. Elias blinked up at him, and Rowan's eyes shone. "You have Zara's eyes," he whispered in awe, noticing the newborn's dark brown gaze, so much like his mother's. Zara couldn't hold back a soft laugh. "Newborn eye color can change," she said quietly. "But yes, I think he has my eyes, and her hair is all you—" They shared a gentle smile. For a moment, they were just two new parents marveling over their children, the heavy history between them momentarily set aside. After a few minutes, the twins were both back in the bassinet, sleeping soundly. Rowan returned to his chair by Zara's side. The seriousness of their conversation settled back in. "I want to be in their lives," Rowan said softly but firmly. "Whatever it takes, whatever role you'll allow me, I want to be there for them. They're my children, and they deserve a father who loves them." He paused. "And I still—" He caught himself, voice trembling. "I still love you, Zara. I never stopped. I know I have no right to expect anything from you now. I lost that right when I broke your trust. But I want you to know the love I have for you. It never died. Seeing you again, seeing what an incredible mother you are, it only reminds me of what I lost." Zara's eyes welled anew. Her heart thundered. She had longed to hear those words, but she feared them too. "Rowan, this past year I had to learn to live without you, to become someone stronger for my kids." Her voice quavered. "I can forgive you, and I think part of me wants to, for the sake of our children if nothing else. You can forgive someone without forgetting who you became without them. I won't ever forget how much I've grown on my own, and how much pain I went through. I can't just pretend it never happened." Rowan nodded earnestly. "I don't expect you to. I know I have to earn any place in your life again, beyond being the twins' father, and if it takes the rest of my life, I'll do it. I'll prove to you I'm not that man anymore. I'm not asking to pick up where we left off. I know we need to rebuild from the ground up, maybe even as friends, CO parents, whatever you're comfortable with. I only ask for the chance. Please." Zara looked at him, seeing the sincerity in every line of his face. Gone was the arrogant billionaire who once presumed the worst of her. In his place was a humbled man, willing to put in the work, the father of her children, and the only man she had ever truly loved. Before she could respond, a nurse knocked and peeked in, offering to take the babies for a routine check in the nursery so Zara could rest. Zara allowed it, and Rowan reluctantly let the nurse wheel the bassinet out, his eyes following anxiously until they disappeared. Zara almost smiled. He already had that protective father look. After the nurse left, the room felt very quiet and empty without the babies. Zara took a deep breath. "You're right," she finally said, breaking the silence. "We do need to rebuild." Slowly, Rowan sat up straighter, hope lighting his face. "Does that mean—" "It means," Zara said carefully, "that I'm willing to try, for them, and for us. But I need time, Rowan. I can't just fall back into your arms. My trust in you, it's been badly hurt." A look of profound relief and gratitude washed over him. "Of course, I understand. I'll give you all the time you need. I'll start wherever you're comfortable, even if it's just visiting the twins or helping with errands, whatever you'll let me do." Zara managed a small smile. "Well, considering I haven't had a decent night's sleep in 3 days, I'd say having an extra pair of hands around might be nice." Rowan let out a breathy chuckle, his eyes shining. "I can do that. Absolutely. I'll change every diaper, sing lullabies, run to the store at 2 a.m. for formula, anything." "You say that now," Zara teased lightly, "but wait until you've actually done a 2 a.m. feeding." Her tone was warmer now, the tiniest hint of their old camaraderie creeping in. He grinned. "I can't wait," he said, and meant it. They shared a quiet laugh, and just like that, the ice was broken. The road ahead would not be simple, but they had taken the first step back toward each other. 6 months later, on a balmy spring afternoon, Zara found herself standing barefoot, in the same lakeside spot where she and Rowan had exchanged vows years before. The sun was dipping low, painting the sky in hues of peach and lavender. In her arms, she held baby Elias, while Rowan cradled baby Ariella. A small group of loved ones gathered around, Candice, Zara's mother, with happy tears in her eyes as she cooed at her grandbabies, and even Rowan's mother, looking on with a softened expression that had taken those 6 months of getting to know Zara and her grandchildren to achieve genuine warmth. Yes, grandchildren. For on a quilt nearby sat Rowan's spry 80-year-old grandmother, who had insisted on flying in to meet the miraculous new additions to the Kingsley family. She was positively besotted with the twins and with Zara, often remarking how fortunate Rowan was to have his family back. Zara had flushed with modesty at that, but Rowan had squeezed her hand and agreed wholeheartedly. A gentle breeze rustled the willow branches as Rowan passed Ariella to Zara's mom to hold. He then took Zara's now free hand in his. They stood facing each other by the lake's edge, each holding one of their children, and each surrounded by the people who mattered most. In the golden light, Rowan cleared his throat. He wore a simple linen shirt, the relaxed setting a far cry from the formal tux of their first wedding, but his eyes held the same adoration. "Zara," he began softly, for her ears only, though everyone could hear, the last time we stood here, I promised to love and cherish you through anything. I failed that promise once, but by some miracle, you and our beautiful children have given me a second chance. I vow to you today with all my heart that I will never let pride or fear separate us again. I will spend the rest of my days proving my love, trust, and devotion to you and our family. Tears glistened in Zara's eyes. In the past months, Rowan had been true to his word. He had been by her side every step of rearing. The twins, from late-night feedings to doctor visits, to giving Zara breaks to nap or shower. He attended therapy to work through his past mistakes and insecurities, and together they also went to couples counseling to rebuild their foundation. Each day was a step forward, and Zara's guarded heart had slowly reopened to the man Rowan had become, a man who showed humility, patience, and unwavering kindness. Healing begins the moment pride ends, and indeed, once Rowan set aside his ego and opened himself fully, their healing had begun in earnest. Zara gently bounced Elias in her arms, the baby sucking on his thumb contentedly, and responded, voice thick with emotion. "Rowan, meeting you and loving you has been one of the greatest blessings of my life. It brought me pain when we fell apart, but it also taught me so much about myself, about what true love and forgiveness mean. I stand here today, stronger and happier, because we found our way back to the truth and to each other. I promise to always speak truthfully and listen openly, to face life's challenges with you, not against you. I promise to keep courage in our love and never let fear break what we have again." A sniffle sounded from Candice, who was dabbing her eyes with a tissue. Even Rowan's mother discreetly wiped a tear, finally understanding the depth of her son's love for this remarkable woman. With their renewed vows spoken, Rowan and Zara sealed them with a gentle kiss. Their small audience cheered softly, mindful of the babies between them. Ariella, nestled in her grandmother's arms, let out a happy coo as if in agreement, and little Elias clapped his tiny hands with Zara's help, which made everyone laugh. Under the golden sunset, the reunited family gathered close for a group hug. Money can buy comfort, but it can't buy character, loyalty, or family. Rowan had learned the truth of those words the hard way. He knew that his wealth meant nothing compared to the riches of the heart he now held, a wife who had forgiven him, and taught him the true meaning of love, and 2 precious children who would grow up surrounded by that love. As they all strolled back toward the cozy lakeside house they had rented for this intimate ceremony, Rowan fell in step with Zara, who leaned her head against his shoulder while carrying a now sleepy Elias. Rowan wrapped an arm around her, supporting both her and their son. Candace walked ahead with Ariella, making faces at the giggling baby, while Zara's mom chatted kindly with Rowan's mother. A bridge built at last between their families. Rowan paused with Zara for a moment, letting the others go ahead. The evening sky reflected in the lake, and fireflies were starting to twinkle in the dimming light. He looked at Zara, pure contentment on his face. "Thank you," he whispered, kissing her temple, "for believing in me again." Zara looked up at him, her eyes filled with love. "Thank you for never giving up." She reached up and caressed his cheek tenderly. "We found our way back, Rowan." "We all did." He smiled, touching his forehead to hers gently. "Love requires courage, not control. You taught me that. And you taught me that real love is worth fighting for, worth humbling yourself for. I'm so lucky to have learned from you." Zara's heart swelled at his words. They stood there for a beat, a quiet understanding passing between them. The past was behind them, and a bright future lay ahead. From the house porch, Candace called playfully, "Hey, lovebirds, get over here. We have a cake to cut, and I might have promised someone a taste of frosting," she added, indicating Ariella, who was reaching eagerly for the slice of cake in her hand. Laughing, Rowan and Zara walked hand in hand toward their family and friends. In that moment, Zara realized how far they had come. You can forgive someone without forgetting who you became without them. She hadn't. She'd forgotten the independent, resilient woman she became during their time apart. But now she could merge that woman with the loving wife and mother she was once again. And Rowan, having shed his pride, was now the partner she always deserved. Their story was not a fairy tale of perfect people, but a real journey of mistakes, growth, and redemption. They had faced the darkness of lies and distrust, but emerged into the light of truth and love. With Ariella and Elias gurgling happily and a loving community around them, Rowan and Zara stepped forward to enjoy their second chance at happily ever after, a little older, a lot wiser, and more grateful than ever for the family and love they fought to reclaim. If this story touched your heart, please hit that like button and subscribe for more emotional tales of love, loss, and second chances. Your support means the world and helps me bring you more stories like this. I'd love to hear from you. What was your favorite moment in this story? Was it when Rowan first held the twins? When Zara stood her ground? Or that beautiful vow renewal at the end? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one. And if you know someone who loves a good redemption story, share this with them. Everyone deserves a reminder that love, forgiveness, and second chances are possible. Until next time, remember, love requires courage, not control. Take care of yourselves and each other.